All right, before we dive in today's episode of Chicago Bears Now, I am challenging Vikings Now and their host Patrick Seatman to a sub battle for now until the end of the month. We got just over a week in the month of January. So, can we get more subscribers than Vikings Now? Come on, we can't lose to the damn Vikes. Daily Bears videos, news, rumors, free agency, draft, coaching, search. Got to fill out the rest of this offensive staff, defensive coordinator. Let's go. Bear down. So coming up on today's show, my name is Harrison Graham. We're going to get into some offensive free agent targets after the Bears have hired Shane Waldron as their offensive coordinator. I just wanted to take a look at some of the top players at key positions the Bears need that are available in free agency. So we'll do that in just a moment. Now, there are a few things to know. Number one, Waldron likes to run a lot of 11 personnel, which are 3 wide receiver sets, 1 tight end, 1 running back. That's what 11 personnel is. You look at the Bears right now, DJ Moore and a bunch of question marks, so you would think some additions are going to be made there. Run game is still important. Waldron likes to throw the ball, but that McVay coaching tree still runs the ball quite a bit as well. And some Bears non-quarterback needs, because for free agents, I'm not talking quarterbacks. We know it's going to be Justin or someone in the draft. Wide receiver, center, running back, tight end. Obviously not a starting tight end, but more of a number 2 type. I've said if you want to go Brock Bowers in the draft, that's fine with me, but I don't think you're signing someone to unseat Cole Kmet in free agency. All right, so let's get to some top wide receiver targets. We'll take a look at some lesser names as well. Mike Evans. I keep coming back to the well, and listen, I know everybody's like, why take Mike Evans when you could draft Marvin Harrison or draft Malik Neighbors? Who says you can't do both? I mean, I just told you that Shane Waldron likes running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Evans, who he ages like fine wine. I mean, first of all, seems like he's been around forever. He's only going to be 31 next year. He just had a monster year, had a monster game against Detroit in the playoffs in a losing effort for Tampa Bay. He's just fantastic. And with his boundary ability to go up and win one-on-ones, to burn past corners still, to go over the middle on deep crossers and win those type of battles as well, he can still take over games, man. And the beauty of bringing him in here is he doesn't have to be a true alpha male number 1. It could be a 1A, 1B. Hell, he can be the number 2 next to DJ Moore. You add him to this offense, man. Yeah, it's probably more of a 2-3 year deal. It's not a 5-year thing with him being 31, but I'm very intrigued. I would throw him 2 years and $50 million without hesitating. How about Calvin Ridley? Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, he took off a year and a half. He left 2021 personal issues with the Falcons. Then he got suspended for 2022 with the gambling deal. Came back this year. Had an up and down season, but was still pretty productive. He's available. So is Michael Pittman Jr. with the Indianapolis Colts, who had probably his best season of his career, and especially when you look at the efficiency. 156 targets, caught 109 of those. He definitely took advantage of his opportunities a lot more than Ridley did. Ridley kind of came out the gates hot, hit the skids in the middle of the year, then finished strong. Still had a good year, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. Pittman over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think the beauty of these guys, they're both very good, but they can be like those high-end number 2s, right? Like especially Calvin Ridley. You bring him in, he's your number 2 guy, go catch 65, 70 passes, have, roughly 1,000 yards, and DJ Moore can still be that number 1. I think that's a very, very appealing outcome, and then you could still draft someone in either of these scenarios as well. Now pick a wide receiver out of these top 3, and you'll notice I'm leaving out one big name. I'll explain why in a second. Type ME for Mike Evans, CR for Calvin Ridley, or MP for Michael Pittman Jr. Which receiver would you like to sign if you were the Bears? Now, just quick note, I didn't include T. Higgins. He's not going to hit free agency. And quite frankly, between Ridley, Pittman, and who did I just talk about? Ridley, Pittman, and Evans, one or multiple of those guys might get franchise tag. But there is no scenario that I see where T. Higgins hits free agency. So if you want him, you're going to have to trade for him. You could do that, but I just didn't include him. Again, one of those other 3 could be tagged as well, maybe even multiple, but I think there are at least avenues where they do hit free agency and test the open market. Okay, some lesser names, but still guys that you could bring in. Marquise Brown started out great this year, slowed down, then got hurt, kind of had an uneven year in Arizona, but he's got speed. He could be a deep threat. Darnell Mooney, I'm still open to bringing him back as a number 3, hopefully with the new offensive coordinator. If you get a good wide receiver coach, you can get him going again. I think he still has value as a number 3, especially if it's a team-friendly deal. Gabe Davis is one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL. Big game Gabe. He kind of disappears at times as a receiving threat, but I think as a number 3 is pretty solid. Same with Tyler Boyd, good slot receiver. He could be your number 3. Curtis Samuel as well. Most of these fit the bill of what I would want as a number 3. Maybe Marquise Brown's a number 2, but those are some names that are still out there. Let's go to the center position, some top center targets. Connor Williams, who we've talked about a couple of times here on the program, had his best year yet this season in Miami. I think he was the overall either number 1 or number 2. I think he was the number 2 graded center. Either Jason Kelsey or Creed Humphrey was graded a bit higher, but he was excellent. Great run blocker, still good in the pass game as well. Did have 7 penalties. He's a little grabby at times, but overall, transitioning to center in Miami has been a good fit. He occasionally has a bad snap, but Lucas Patrick can't snap either, and Cody Whitehair can't snap, but they also just can't block. Connor Williams can at least do that part consistently. Now, the key note here is the torn ACL. Tore his ACL late in November. Is he going to be ready for training camp? Is he going to be ready for week 1? Those are evaluations you have to do if you're Ryan Poles. I think if you bring in Connor Williams, you probably have to bring back a Lucas Patrick type, at least someone that could get you through the first start of the season if needed, or maybe you draft a rookie in this scenario as well, so keep that in mind. Lloyd Cushenberry, who people were calling a bust through his first 3 seasons in Denver, and then this year, Sean Payton gets in there and has a career year, played really well, had a breakout. I think it was a top 10 graded center per PFF this season. I thought he improved a lot in the games I watched him play. He fits the athletic profile of what you would want. Now, he might cost a lot. He might be the most expensive free agent center because he is really young still. I think he's 25, and he's ascending. So kind of depends on how much you want to spend. Some more cost-effective options that fit the scheme and overlap with the offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. Coleman Shelton with the Rams. He overlapped with Waldron in Los Angeles. Same offensive type of scheme, obviously. So I think you could go in that direction. I like that these two know each other. He wouldn't cost as much. Now, I'm not trying to go cheap at center, but he would be a cheaper option, and he knows the scheme. Is this guy going to be an all-pro? No. But is he going to be better than Lucas Patrick, Cody Whitehair, Doug Kramer, Sam Mustipher? Yes. And he's not going to cost you a ton of money, so I wouldn't mind bringing in Coleman Shelton as that option as well. We'll get to another option of who's overlapped with Waldron in a second, but I do want to talk a little bit first about our sponsor, Prize Picks. We appreciate Prize Picks for sponsoring Chicago Bears now all season long and now into the offseason as well as we continue through the NFL playoffs. The beauty of Prize Picks is you can play daily fantasy. You don't have to wait until Sundays. You don't have to wait until the weekend gets here. NBA, college basketball, the NHL, they got games every single night. 2 to 6 player entries. Choose more or less on stat projections from Prize Picks, and you're not playing against pros and sharks. It's just you versus the stat projections. I like this for championship weekend in the NFL. Isaiah Pacheco, he's been good recently. Baltimore's so good against the run, though. Roquan Smith, our old pals over there. I think it's going to be tough to run the football. Lamar Jackson, I don't think he'll get loose as much either. I got the less on him rushing. I like Travis Kelce, though. Had a good game last week. I think he is in line for a lot of targets from Patrick Mahomes as well. 10 to win 50 on this 3-player entry. You can go up to 6-player entries, which means you can win up to 25 times your money on those. You can win up to even more if you make demon selections, which means they basically make the more or less stat line higher, but you have to take the more. It's tougher to hit, but if you do, you can cash out even more. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get started today. Okay, Evan Brown, who obviously was with Shane Waldron this season in Seattle, didn't have his best year. So that would be my one hesitation here, is that he didn't have a great season this year with the Seahawks, but scheme fit, knows the offensive coordinator. Obviously, there wouldn't be much of a learning curve in that regard. He is a bit of a veteran now, so I like that. You could do a lot worse. I still think it's an upgrade, but he's not like a top 10 center or something like that. The scheme fit, you could do worse, but you're not going to be doing jumping jacks if you sign Evan Brown. And then Andre James, who you could argue after Connor Williams had the best year of any of these players. I'd probably still say Cushenberry was better this year, but he was better than Shelton and Brown. Not a great scheme fit, though. We know that the Bears, with their offensive linemen, value athleticism. You go back to his RAS score, his relative athletic score, one of the lowest graded centers in the last decade or so. Not athletic, doesn't move that well. So I don't think he fits the scheme. And considering he's going to cost a little bit more than a Coleman Shelton or a Evan Brown, I'd rather take one of those guys for cheaper who fits the scheme better than a guy who, yes, might be a better overall player, but doesn't fit what the Bears are going to try to do. So I'd probably pass on Andre James. Who do you want as the Bears center next year? Those are 5 guys in free agency that are available. Obviously, you could look at the draft. Our good pal Cedric Van Pran. You've got Jackson Barton out of Duke. Frazier out of West Virginia. It's a good year to need a center. That's the good news. Let us know who you want to be the next Bears center. Some running backs. Listen, I've been on the train of as long as the price isn't massive, I am open to upgrading at running back. You look at these 3 guys all set to hit free agency, and yes, the franchise tag, especially in Barkley and Jacobs' case, could come into play once again. But I feel really good about Derrick Henry not hitting the open market. I've made the case for him. I just imagine like a guy that can wear teams down, especially in the month of November, December, January, as these games get colder and these teams are more worn down late in the season. Like, if you're a better passing team and then you just hammer Henry late in these games, it's going to be tough to tackle him at windy and cold Soldier Field. We'll see what happens with Saquon and Josh Jacobs. But, like, I mean, if you can get one of these guys in the $8 to $10 million per year range on a 2-year or less deal, I'm open to it, man. I think upgrading running back is a sneaky possibility because I know everybody's going to sit there and say, the Bears were second in rushing last year. They don't need to upgrade there. Well, a couple of things. One, if Justin Fields isn't here, you're losing a lot of that production. Caleb Williams will give you some production if you go there. Drake May will give you some production if you go in that direction at quarterback. They're going to run some, but they're not going to be a threat to run for 1,000 yards. Khalil Herbert, up and down, missed some time with an injury. He's been injured each of the past 2 years. Deontay Foreman, I don't think is going to be back. Roschon Johnson, I like the guy. Is he ready to be a lead back, though? I really think keep an eye on the running back position. I would not be surprised at all if Ryan Poles considered this, especially if the price is right and especially if it's on a short-term deal. Should the Bears sign a big-name running back? Type Y for yes or type N for no? I'd like to, man. I don't think you're going to have to shelve out crazy money. Like, I think it'd be in that $10 million range per year, maybe less. And you got 60-something million, probably going to have 80-something million if you cut Cody Whitehair and Eddie Jackson. So I would pull the trigger, man. I would definitely consider it. Some other running backs that are out there, you could go with the Tony Pollard or an Austin Ekeler type who have been starters in this league. I didn't like the way Pollard played this year in Dallas, if I'm being honest. Ekeler slowed down this year too. DeAndre Swift's an interesting one. He played pretty well for Philadelphia. Obviously knows the NFC North playing in Detroit. Do you take a swing on J.K. Dobbins, who's been good when he's been healthy, but he's gotten hurt basically every year? Devin Singletary had a revitalized season in Houston. He could be looking to cash in a little bit. So there's some other guys out there. I'd view some of these other guys as like rotation type of backs, which the Bears could go in that direction too. All right, tight ends. Few guys here. I'm not going to mention Dalton Schultz because that's a high-level starter. I'm looking at guys who can complement Cole Kmet. And yes, Hunter Henry, he's probably a starter in this league. But if you bring him in here, you probably run a decent amount of 12 personnel where you're giving Hunter Henry some looks, especially in the red zone. So I'm definitely open to that. Noah Fant, another guy who Waldron would know, obviously. He's been in Seattle the last couple of years since the Russell Wilson trade that he was a part of. Good red zone threat, can really catch the football. Gerald Everett has overlapped in this scheme, playing with Sean McVay. He also was in Seattle before that, where Waldron has been, obviously. So schematically, there's no learning curve. I've always liked Gerald Everett. I think as a complimentary number 2 tight end, that's a huge upgrade from what you got out of Robert Tonyan there. I think you got to upgrade at tight end too. I would love Mercedes Lewis to come back as tight end 3. He already said he plans on playing next season. Now, whether that's here or somewhere else remains to be seen, but if you can convince him to come back on the vet minimum, he's still a very good blocker, reliable tight end 3. You bring in a guy like Gerald Everett as your number 2, Listen, that tight end room's pretty good with Komet, Everett, and Mercedes Lewis. All right, there you have it. Some offensive players I'm keeping my eyes on now that Shane Waldron is the offensive coordinator in Chicago. If you have a name that you're eyeing, drop it down in the comment section below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for some more Bears YouTube videos.